everybody. I am Denise Kawaii here with Jen and our friend Vikki on Skirts and Words. You've made it to another episode. You're welcome. So here's Vikki, and we wanted her to come on because she does a really amazing podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your podcast and what
Tell
you do.
us the name first
Sure.
so we can find it.
Sure. It's called Authors of the Pacific Northwest, and it's on iTunes and Podbean. People have found it on both places. And it's very specific. So the title, obviously, Authors of the Pacific Northwest, I focus in on independent, or hybrid, or even traditional published authors in the Pacific Northwest. And basically, I pick their brains about how they got where they got. Because I'm an aspiring author, and I'm like, how did you do it? And so I'm up to about 50 author interviews, 32 episodes. Released.
I'm one of them.
Yes, she is.
Yay!
Denise is one of my favorites.
And it was a really great experience, and it's part of why we started this whole thing.
Aw.
Because it kind of made it seem more possible, I guess.
Oh, that makes me
I
so
just did it
happy.
for the fame and the money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
well,
all do that.
Yeah. Rolling in it, let me tell
Oh,
you.
heavens, yes.
I go to the dollar store and I'm like,
Yes.
So what was it that made you initially decide that having a podcast, like regardless of content, would be a good idea?
Pure naivety. 100% didn't know what I was doing, but I'm a podcast listener.
Mhm.
And so I was starting to listen to these podcasts going, this can't be that hard, right? And so then I started to do some research on how to do it, and I found some really interesting, just like with authors, there's a lot of interesting promotions that people will get money from you to train you how to do stuff. And I come from higher education, so I believe in training myself.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, this can't be that hard. So then I got a couple of books, started reading it, and I just decided it's a really great medium. And the way I do my podcast, I wanted it to be a little different than anything I'd heard before. I wanted to give authors a great platform. And I found that many authors, we tend to not read our own work very well, and I
Sure.
wanted to give that opportunity to do that in a whole different medium than maybe standing up in front of a group of people.
Mhm.
It's a great skill to have. And so it just started in my head first, and then I thought, this is kind of crazy. And I've been around musicians my whole married life, so I'm like, it can't be that hard. I sat in a lot of studios and watched them make this stuff happen. And so I went to my husband and said, I want to start a podcast. And he kind of looked at me like, you want to do a podcast? I don't sing. I barely just decided I was going to write. And I go, yeah, I think there's something in this. I think I can do this. He's like, I go, but I need a new computer. And I need a mic. And I started listing all the things that I need. He went behind all the way, and we just started. And funny story, Jen, you'll like this. So my first episode that I recorded, first 2 episodes were with some local gals, Julianne Winters and Chris Kibbe, and I knew Chris Kibbe from prior work, and I didn't know how to record, and I'm like, well, let's just meet at Vault and Brew, thinking, that sound of the coffee in the background would sound really great, and I'm like, okay, great. So I get here, and Julianne's like, are you sure the background noise will be? I go, oh yes, I can edit it out, no big deal. Really full of myself. I get home and I listen to it, I'm like, oh my God, it was horrible.
Oh,
my mic
no.
picked up everything. It was busy that Saturday, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta figure out something else. And then it was really great. Chris Kibbe is like, why don't you just record using like Skype or something? And so I did some research, and now I only record using I use Zoom, and so authors call in. They can be from anywhere in the Northwest. I don't have to meet face to face. They call in, and I do it right from my home. I work from home, so I can coordinate it around that. And as long as my dogs are being quiet, it pretty much works out well. And so it's just been really great. But my first 2 episodes I have on tape from here. Vault and Brew.
Nice.
We didn't use them though.
Yeah, darn it.
I know. But the idea of the coffee was a great idea.
I think it works in, like, have you ever watched comedians in cars getting coffee?
Yeah.
It works when you're doing it like a segue,
Yeah,
and then you have the
exactly.
sound, and then you go back to it. I think that would work.
Or
but
there's a ton of NPR,
Yeah.
like ones that they'll have the coffee, but they have these like, they pay producers and sound people, and it's just me.
yeah, it's
Right,
not really like an
right.
So I
organic
can't,
thing.
I can't do all that.
Darn it.
So-
Well, the thought was there.
Yeah.
We do appreciate it.
Well,
Yeah, writers and coffee just like go together.
They do.
Yeah.
Don't they? I see Denise all the time has all of her coffee and her pictures and
Yeah,
staying up.
so I did a photo series for my Instagram, and it's me. I started at the beginning of the day, and it was a 14-hour writing day. I like saved up for months because I don't actually drink that much caffeine. I saved up for months all the coffee containers from all my favorite coffee places, and every hour took a series of photos, and then my husband edited them all together into a 4-second clip. So it
It's
goes
so
from
fun.
sun up to sundown, and then I crash at the end because I've got like so many cups of coffee. It's ridiculous. But that has been like my biggest post that I have ever done on Instagram, and I have reposted it a couple times because people
They love it. It's brilliant. It really does fit Instagram well. So you did a great job of that. I saw it and I'm like, dang, I wish I had that idea. Shit, do it good. I have to come up with something else.
Yeah. So, say you think that you should have a podcast and you talk with someone else about it and you're like, hey, we should have a podcast, and you don't really know what you're doing. I'm asking for a friend.
Sure.
How would you market that podcast? Like, what's the best way that you found to market that? My
Man.
friend wants to know.
Marketing is truly the biggest animal, and it is the animal for writers and podcasters. And it becomes the business of marketing, not so much creating the content like what we're doing here, but how do you get that out to find your listeners? And it's something that kept me awake. I was a very mild social media user. I actually fought being on social media and Facebook for years when I was in my professional role, and I was actually asked by my supervisor to go on Facebook to follow a employee, and I'm like, no, I don't want to go on Facebook. But I knew there was some power behind it because my daughters, so I have older daughters in their early 20s, and I'm seeing them follow these people, and so I basically just picked their brain. I said, how do I do this? How do I get my podcast to be noticed? And my daughters taught me about hashtags and really great content as far as using the right content for the right social media. So Instagram is fantastic for photos and anything that plays in the photo aspect of it, and hashtags work very, very well on Instagram.
Yeah.
Twitter, I hated the idea of Twitter from day one. Seriously, I tell this story on the podcast. I had one Twitter follower. It was my mom. I didn't know my mom had a Twitter account. I'm like, seriously, Mom, you're just so into this stuff. And so I go on. I had no followers, and I freaked out. So I was ready to put out the podcast, and I'm like, I don't have any Twitter followers. Very few Instagram followers, and my Facebook was just my personal Facebook. And so once again, one of my author friends, she's like, Twitter's a cakewalk, Vikki. What you need to do is go on and do hashtag games and use hashtags to promote your whatever you're doing, your writing, your podcast, and you'll find a community, and it'll happen very quickly. And the other advice that she gave to me was to check your followers often and unfollow people that don't fit what you need, and unfollow people that aren't following you back. And so that became the business of promoting became my existence for about 4 months. Very exhausting. I was trying to come up with, really great images we can use. For me, it was easy because authors all have Facebook pages or author pages. So I just lifted their images and we created it. So did a little graphic design. And so basically you want to just jump in and you want to use what's already being used. So hashtags. So one of my main hashtags is Pacific Northwest, or PNW.
Okay.
And that has a ton of followers, no matter if it's on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. And so when I use that hashtag and I talk about an author of the Pacific Northwest, I hashtag PNW, and I get at least 5 or 6 new people that have never heard about it. And almost everybody's a reader. I mean, it's very rare that somebody's not a reader. So that's kind of how I did it. So you really want to be smart about how you use those social media. You want to figure out 5 or 6 good hashtags that will bring that audience to you. And then you got to stay up on it.
Yeah.
It's gotten so big for me. I'm lucky I actually got to hire. I'm hiring a social media manager who is also my daughter, who's also a graphic designer, and she's also a digital comic writer. So she gets all of it, and I've actually paid her for her first month's work for me, and I'm like, score, I love this, because that's her passion, not so much mine.
Right.
But I developed a way of doing it for me. Now she's taking it over. I can focus in on the podcast and ultimately writing. That's the whole goal for me.
That's my goal.
Yes.
is to get a personal assistant.
Yes.
You don't think our kids are going to do that?
Not mine. He's going to be on the railroad, so.
Is that what he decided?
At the moment he was able to articulate anything, it was all trains all the time.
I love it.
So he's not interested.
Well, true story about my social media manager. She's going to love me for saying this. We thought she was going to be a paleontologist her whole life. She loves dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So we were a little surprised that she was going to graphic design. Like, well, what about paleontology? Like, why don't you go dig a bone somewhere? So you never know who they're going to end up being.
Yeah, life is interesting. It throws you in different directions. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the marketing thing is interesting because I will admit this now because I'm talking about being open and honest a lot lately. And I have always, I've been in business a long time. My husband and I have owned a couple of businesses together that were very successful, and I've failed at several businesses that were not so successful. But even through all of that, I really believed this myth that if you just make something really amazing, the customers will come. And it's totally
Not true.
not true. I mean, there is that lightning strike where somebody gets really lucky and they release
Yeah.
exactly the right thing at exactly the right time.
Yeah.
It has to be the right place, right
It
time.
really is. It's all about
Yeah.
luck, though, in that case.
But it's like 99.95% of the people, that's not going to happen. And so hashtags are really what made my Instagram, it works for the way my brain works.
Yeah, exactly.
And I tell people all the time that Instagram and Facebook to me are not that different. I mean, they're
Well,
they're
they share,
owned.
they share everything now
Yeah,
together.
they're
So.
shared. But for some reason, the format of Instagram, it's just the way my brain works. It totally clicks, and I have been able to make so many more connections than I have been able to make on any other platform.
I love Instagram. I used to not love Instagram, and I used to not love Twitter. I was very comfortable with Facebook, but I now love Instagram and Twitter. My most followers come from those two sources, and the thing that I love about Instagram is it's visual, and so it works really well with what authors or a podcast do, and it's really, the thing I don't like about it is that it's also limiting, in the sense that I have to use my phone to post.
Right.
And Buffer doesn't work really great. So Buffer is a great scheduling tool where you can do multiple scheduling for all three of them, but they won't really send out your Instagram on Instagram for you. It'll remind you. So that frustrates me because I love automation. The more you can automate, the better it is, because it becomes, like you said, you can create the best content in the world, but you have to spend almost as much time or more from creating to promoting.
Right.
Promoting becomes the beast. And every author I've talked to, I ask them, what's your marketing tips? And every single successful author has good tips, and it usually is around social media.
Yeah.
Right. I think we've definitely seen that in the people that we've talked to on here.
Yeah.
That are really good at that. So what is the length of each episode for you?
About 45 minutes.
45 minutes?
Yep.
Do you find that it's hard to sustain? So if people are following you on Instagram and following you on Twitter, the attention span seems really short. Do you find it's hard to translate that into people sitting and listening or watching?
I haven't heard anything yet that it's all audio. I don't have visual.
Okay.
So I'm not doing like you gals are doing with YouTube. That's my next phase of something else, but right now it's all audio. So I haven't found that there's been any issues with people not listening all the way through. Most people listen to podcasts or commuting, and 45 minutes is almost the perfect commute podcast.
Yeah.
I like 35 minutes, and so my 45 minutes is kind of a buffer in, some in between. But for me, the way I do it is we talk a lot about the author's journey to publication, and then I keep my listeners, I think, because I have the authors read at the end. I don't let them read at the beginning. I want them to read at the end, because I like to sit back and I'll shut off my mic and listen, and I get totally engrossed.
Yeah.
I love it. And so I haven't found that being an issue, and maybe it's a visual thing versus an audio thing.
Yeah, because I've noticed, like, when I share on Facebook, people, I don't know, they've told me, like, they'll go through and they'll be like, oh yeah, I saw that you shared that, and I watched a couple minutes of it and stuff, but, like, how do you get them to sit and listen to the whole thing?
I'm not sure if it's your responsibility to do so.
That's true.
I
shouldn't go to their house and make them
No.
sit down like Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, exactly.
You will love me.
Listen, and I will give you a test afterwards.
Yes.
Pop quiz. I do
Yeah.
that with my students, but I
Yeah.
don't do that with my listeners. One really great piece of advice that I just recently got, I joined a Facebook podcast group because I'm starting to get to the stage where I'm like, I'm either going to shift my focus or I need to do something new. 50 interviews, I'm kind of doing the same thing. I'm getting a little, my end of it, I'm getting stale. And so they're talking a lot about downloads and numbers and listeners and that kind of thing. And I try not to look at how many downloads I've had and that kind of thing. But the gal made a really great comment. Anybody that downloads your podcast or watches it, you should feel privileged because they're stopping 5, 10, 45 minutes in their day to listen to you. So I was like, that is such a great perspective to look at it because I don't think I'm that exciting or that interesting, but for me, I've had 700 and something downloads in 7 months. And so that just means I have the privilege of that many people taking 45 minutes maybe to listen to me. And that feels great.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I didn't feel like that until I heard her say that.
Yeah.
And I'm
Right,
like,
right.
wait, how many people listen to me? And I looked like, oh, okay, because it's a lot of work.
Well,
It's a lot
and
of work.
there are people who watch all the way to the end. I know you do because I recently went and I met another Instagram person for coffee, and she knows everything about everything I've done. Like she's seen all of our videos.
Really?
And knows I'm like telling her, she's asking me questions. I'm telling her stories, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I saw that on Instagram. I know all about that." It's like, okay then. Well, tell me about you, because
You obviously know enough about me.
Yeah.
Nice. Good. Well, I'm glad.
Yeah.
Now we just have to get to that just audio level.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
The technology is a challenge. It really is.
I'm not techie at all.
I used to think I was.
Yeah.
This was a big
I never thought I
learning
was.
curve. Yeah. I work in the College of IT for a university. I should be able to do this. It's had its bumps. There were some moments I've been able to put out a podcast every single Monday without fail. Now it's not at the same time, but I've been able to fulfill my goal of every Monday. There's some times that I sweated it so bad because the audio was either so horrible or I couldn't get the edits right, and I'm just like, I'm gonna have to skip this Monday, and I'm like, I can't, and I would stay up all night long researching how to fix it. So, and I was able to do it. So, the technical side is a huge learning curve. So, if I would say to people that are interested in doing this, either if you're not interested in that learning curve yourself, find somebody that you can really partner with to do it for you, that you can give something back to them in some way. And that's a hard partnership to find.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
Sure.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have there been some interviews that you feel have just been like super terrible and you can't share them?
Yeah. I've been able to share all of them. I'll tell
Yeah.
you what I feel like most is not necessarily that after I get into the discussion, after I get the author warmed up, I can start maneuvering them in questions in a way to make it feel okay. But it's before interviews. Everybody thinks I'm this massive, bubbly extrovert, and I'm truly an introvert. And I've said this on my podcast. I'm an introvert that's mastered extrovert tendencies. And a lot of people wouldn't know this, but when I was younger, I wouldn't talk to people. I wouldn't talk on the phone. I mean, all of that.
Yep.
And so they're
I
all
totally understand that.
amazed
Yeah.
when they hear me, and they're like, really? Or I get on stage for work all the time, and they're like, really? That's you? But I get nervous every single time, and I've had gut feelings about specific authors just by me doing their research. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to go very well. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to draw out of them enough to make this content for this week great.
That's one thing that's hard about writers. I think that an audio medium is probably good for them because it's not in front of a stage. Because I mean, I think a lot of writers, I think that's one quality is kind of introvert.
It is.
You can I can pretend I'm an extrovert, but at the end of the day, I'm exhausted.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
I
yeah.
need to be silent.
Exactly. And that's 100% true.
Yeah, I think that's a good medium for writers.
But I have been nervous enough at a couple points where I've almost canceled an interview because my gut feels like, oh, this is going to suck. Ends up being my favorite interview ever. And when I'm done, I'm like, I'm energized. I got great tips. I'm like, this person was awesome. You know, it was more about me than them. So, but yeah, you're right. And that's one reason why I really wanted to let authors read. Because it's another opportunity to hear themselves, you know, and practice that one skill that I think that as an author you have to master if you're going to connect with an audience.
Sure.
What do I know? I don't have a book out yet.
I have several on my mind.
But you know a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff, which is why I have enjoyed connecting with you.
Yeah.
And it is really hard, and this all ties back to the marketing thing as an introvert to put yourself out there over and over and over again. And when I was on your podcast, I talked about I go to a lot of conventions and I talk on panels and I meet and greet and I glad hand, and I am really good at that. I really am, but it has taken years of practice. And when my husband and I go to these conventions together, and when we come home, we don't talk. Like, we get in the car and it is silence. Like, we don't turn on the radio. We don't look at each other.
Yep.
We go home.
I know that.
Go to our separate corners, and maybe the next day we'll reconnect, because it's just, it is a lot of absorbing other people's energy. And then with the marketing side of it, there is intense fear that the people are not going to like what you're putting out there.
And that's the thing, it's so personal. I've noticed more I put my actual self out there, like my face and what I'm doing. Those are the ones that get the most responses. And it terrifies me because, like, if they don't like something when I take a picture of coffee, or they're just like, whatever, a picture of a book, that's fine. But like, if I'm putting myself out there and they don't like it, like, it's rejection, and it's terrifying. But
you're gonna get more. I believe you're gonna get more connection if we put ourselves out there. And I'm a firm believer in doing that. I talked to a lot of authors before I started the podcast, and I remember thinking, I was sitting in a local group, and this one gentleman got up and he was talking about not getting published. And then he ranted about all the reasons why he wasn't being published. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, but what are you doing to improve yourself so that you can get published? Because I feel like it's a lot of hard work, and it's really about putting yourself out there. And that's why I went ahead and did the podcast first, because my ultimate vision is to be a published author.
Right.
But I knew that I needed to get a platform, and I knew that I was getting great information to share. And I had to put myself out there. I had to make the decision, that I was going to be a writer, and I had to say it, and then I had to put myself out there. And that was scary as hell, I'll be honest with you. The only person that knew I wrote really seriously was my husband. And for years I was writing in the closet, quiet. Nobody knew about it. And I've been torn down several times in different areas of, you know, you get that people say, oh, you're not a great writer or whatever. So that was all in the back of my mind. But this year I decided I'm not going to listen to that negativity. I'm going to put myself out there and see what happens, because I'm either going to just get rejected or it's going to become something great. And it's been fulfilling to me, so that's all that mattered to me.
Yeah.
I'm fulfilled. I'm happy. I'm doing something I love.
I'm slowly getting there.
Yeah, and I watch on YouTube podcast, the science fiction and fantasy marketing
You
podcast.
mentioned them on my podcast.
Yeah.
I started watching them.
And in one of their episodes, I cannot remember who they were interviewing, but they said there are 7 billion people on the planet. Someone will like what you write, and you just have to keep going until you find that person, and then you convince them to tell a friend. And it builds really slowly. And for me, I have collected my fan base onesie twosie. I think I've been published for 6 years, and now I have, I do have people who want to buy books and want to read more, and it's fantastic, but it doesn't happen overnight for most people. Yeah,
it doesn't. And that's the part, we have to be gentle with ourselves, and we have to realize it's not going to be immediate gratification. There's going to be a lot of back-end scene hard work that nobody sees. It's just like, I think for me, I equate it so much to the music industry on my podcast, because that's what we came from. And there was hundreds of hours of selflessness of the bands, doing work behind the scenes before they even got noticed, and before they even got paid, and even before they even it's just a tremendous amount of work, but everybody wants to look at the glamorous side of all of it, but really to get there to where people look at you glamorously,
Right.
there is years of exhausting work that you don't get recognized for, you don't get paid for, so it has to be something you love.
Yeah, Gretchen Wilson has a line in one of her songs that says, "My overnight success took all my life." I think is a line, and it is just, that is the way it is.
It is. It is. And I hear authors all the time give me the advice, because I always ask them, what would you say to an aspiring author like me? Almost hands down, 95% would say, do it if you love it. If for any reason you don't love it, don't do it. Because it's a selfish, you just got to keep going. Just do it because you love it.
Yeah.
So,
And if you love it, I think that shines through, and then other people
I
will
think
like
it does too.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of catching.
Yeah, I think that's how it
Yeah.
is, like with the store too. Like, I love books so much,
Yes.
and I'm gonna make you like books too, because
Yes.
I'm so excited.
Even if you don't read, you're going to love my store.
I know.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
It's true. No, your store's fantastic.
Verbally assault you until you read. But no, it really does. Like, I was doing a job. I worked for the government before this, and I kind of liked what I did. Like, it wasn't bad, but you know, it doesn't shine through. Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't so excited about that. You know, that you
Exactly.
want to just tell everyone, and like that you would do it for free.
Yeah.
That's what I
exactly.
tell everybody too. Is like, if you want to write, if you want to have a store, if you want to do something like that, you have to love it so much you'll do it for free,
Mhm. Exactly.
or
Yeah,
you'll pay
I
money.
was-
You'll
I
lose
was
money to do
talking.
it.
I was talking to a newly published author recently, and she was not the overnight success that she was. I mean, we all hope.
We
you
all
know,
dream.
you just, it's like the lottery.
It is.
But and so she was like, I got my book out, and that's great, and I'm making pennies a day. And I'm like, but that's okay, because eventually you'll be making $1 a day,
Mhm.
and then
And you're
you
not
know,
losing pennies.
and
That's
it
right.
keeps, you know, it keeps building. But yeah, you have to push through all of that. And the people who are really successful are just the people who have outlasted all the other
Exactly.
people who have given
really
up.
Is. It's 100% that. I have authors coming on that have been working on their author career on the side for 30, 40 years. And I'm like, that's what I want. My whole focus was to get to the place so that when I retire, I can roll into retirement doing something I love. And I'm like, that's fabulous that they sustained the passion. And I asked them, do you give up? Yeah, I gave up many times. What's your inspiration? I can't help myself. I have to write. And same with me with the podcast. It really did start out as, I'm going to build my platform. I had a very clear vision. Build my platform, create a network of authors for myself. It's all about me.
Obviously,
selfishness.
yeah.
Right.
And then it's grown into this community and this thing that I have to do that I love doing. And so it's taken over the writing. So that's why I'm taking time off to do some writing. But you just have to absolutely know the work is going to pay off somewhere.
Right.
And be okay with it and not worry about it and not look at your numbers and just share with anybody that's willing to listen to you.
Yeah.
You know, and just say, come with the journey with me. You might find something exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you have any other questions for our guest?
I don't know. I think, and we've talked about pretty much everything that I had wanted to know.
Yeah. I love being on this side.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's nice and relaxing for me.
Yeah.
Any other tips for podcasters?
Oh, yes. First, be gentle with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Be prepared for the technical learning curve.
Mhm.
Definitely. Don't give up. You know, the minute there's something that hits you technically, do some research and you find out a lot of information. There's a lot of free stuff out there you don't have to pay for. Never pay for advice.
Sure.
And just put it out there and learn from each episode and just get it out there. And like you said, your followers will come. It might be a slow, but the beautiful thing about podcasts that I like is that they're organic. And you want to keep it organic. Otherwise, it turns into a radio station or
Yeah.
a radio thing. And you know, there may be an opportunity for you in the future to be that huge, but the organic part allows you to have this personal connection that you'll lose if you give it.
Right.
And you'll miss it.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite interview that you've done, like of all time?
Oh my gosh, there's so many great interviews. I have to say, I interviewed Susan Wiggs. Okay, so Susan Wiggs is fantastic, hilarious gal. And so we could not get our schedules together because she's actually published traditionally. And so she was heading over to Europe and trying to schedule with me, and our times weren't gelling. And so I finally got her on, and I think she conveniently forgot that I wanted her to read on the podcast. But I interviewed her while she was standing on the streets of London.
Oh man!
And this is what I love about podcasts, because you never know what you're going to get. And I didn't know that she forgot that she had scheduled it during her dinner, right before her dinner time to go to dinner. And so she's literally standing on the streets of London, and you can hear in the background sirens of cars and stuff, and you can hear the clanging of the plates from the little restaurant. So in my mind, I can just see her standing there, right? And I'm like, this is so cool. And so then I had to let the listeners know, so if you hear a bunch of noise in the background, it's because she's actually in London while we're doing this interview. How cool is that?
Yeah.
So that was one of my favorite ones because I couldn't orchestrate it any other way. It was just perfect. And she was a kick to actually talk to and had really fabulous advice. I feel like all my interviews for me are so valuable. I learn something from every author that it's hard for me to pick one particular one, but I love all of them.
So you've been doing this long enough.
Yeah.
Is there an interview question that you will never ask again?
Great question. I'm very structured with my questions, so I don't veer off too often. I have a very structured thing, and I let authors preview those beforehand almost always so they can prepare. I don't think so yet.
Well, I think that's good.
Yeah, I don't think so yet, because I have gotten in the thick of the weeds just a little bit. Like, I hear the author starting to veer off maybe. I don't really want to do politics and things like that on my podcast. There's great places to do that, and I'm not that. And so I typically am able to start weaving it back, and so I kind of feel like I haven't had that opportunity yet to be like, oh, that was bad. I had to edit that out. Sorry. Not yet.
Well, that's good.
I'm sure it'll come. Trust me.
Now that you've said it.
I know. Now that it's out there, someone's gonna get on the podcast just to stump me, which would be great.
Well, thank you so much. Can you tell us one more time where to find your podcast?
Sure. It's called Authors of the Pacific Northwest. You can find it on Podbean or iTunes.
What is it?
Podbean.
Bean?
B-E-A-N.
All right, like a bean pod.
Yep. And on my website, squishpin.com.
Squishpin.com. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. The time has flown by again.
Yes.
It always goes by
was
so
a
fast.
pleasure.
Yeah.
You gals are great. I love it.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming, and join us next time. We'll have another illuminating guest and witty repartee, right?
Always.
Always. Yeah, we'll bring it with us. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.